Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Interviewing Wednesdays. We're very glad you're with us today. It's June 2nd, 2021. For those people on Zoom, as soon as you think of a question, please just put them right into the chat box. And for those people watching on Facebook right now, please just send your comments into the comment field. I am monitoring that feed, and I'll be sure to get those questions answered for you. Please note this event is being recorded like you just heard and is currently live on Facebook. The recording will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel for others to view in the future. By participating in this event, and if you post a comment in the chat box or have your microphone or camera on, you give consent for your comments, name, and picture to appear. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeff Morris. Back in 2008, I started a website called careerdfw.org to help those in job transition in the Dallas-Fort Worth area put everything they need to know about their job search in one place. In 2012, I started a second website, careerusa.org, to help people outside the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I've written a book called What I've Learned About Your Job Search That You May Not Know. It is available on Amazon. Since 2007, I've been leading and facilitating the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group. The group's been around since the late 1990s, and I'll tell you about our upcoming program at the end of this session that's coming up this Friday. And since 2017, I've been a member of the practice interview team, and you'll hear more about that in just a second. Well, when we started doing this, when COVID hit us, I reached out to Mark and Walt and said, hey, you want to do something on Zoom? You want to put together a little workshop on interviewing? And they talked about it. And a couple of weeks later, they said, okay, we have a 13-part series. Who knew it was so involved about interviewing? So we're very glad both the gentlemen are with us. So Mark, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Indeed, who knew we could come up with 20 hours of content just on interviewing, but I'll show you the schedule in a minute and you'll see how that is possible. And we're going through it now. So I'm Mark McDonald. I had a long career in the telecommunications equipment industry. The last 10 years of it were pretty tough. Between 2002 and 2012, I got laid off 3 times because the industry was shrinking and it continues to shrink today. But the upside of that was I got involved in the pit crew in early 2013, and then I started leading it in 2014. So I bring that experience to the pit crew, those 3 times I was laid off. And the last time, I never really got back into the industry that I spent so many years in. I took a bridge job and then I retired in 2018, about 3 years ago, May of 2018. So all that time from 2013 till now, I've been involved with the pit crew and leading it. And that's my story. And that's what I bring to those of you who are in job search. You know, I have a pretty deep optimism that you'll be able to land, primarily based on my experience. So those layoffs, when I got laid off those 3 times, they included a lot of other people on my team in particular. And so people that I knew and kept track of, and they all landed. Even one of those layoffs was in, the 2008-9 timeframe when it was really bad financially, kind of like it has been with COVID. And so they all found good jobs and moved on with their lives. And I think you will too. I'll talk about the pit crew briefly, and just to say that we have some openings. If you send it in today, we'd probably be scheduling it for Monday. You need to send in a job description and a resume. The interview is recorded. It's absolutely free. The people who interview you have all been hiring managers, and many of them are in job transition like you, so they have a lot of empathy for your situation. And our goal is to shorten your job search. So practice early, practice often. Send your resume and job description to dallaspitcrew@gmail.com, and I'll go to work setting up your practice interview. There's my LinkedIn profile, and I'm going to post it in the chat window as well. Here it comes. And there you go. Just click on that and that'll take you to the LinkedIn profile. Please just send me a brief note that says we met on Interview Wednesday. That's good enough for me. I want to know that we're really engaged, that you're not just a spammer. So just include that note and that'll be good for me. Besides the two-way practice interviews that I discussed a few seconds ago, the Pit Crew now offers a one-way practice interview, and we use Easy Hire, which is a commercially available one-way interview tool that companies purchase and use to provide these one-way interviews. And so if you'd like to practice one, you just got to send me an email at dallaspitcrew@gmail.com, and I'll send you the information. You know, once you get this process started, I'm totally disengaged from it. You'll get your video, you can do with it what you please, but nobody else will see it or review it. It's yours to take a look at and see how you did. My version of the one-way practice interview includes giving you the questions ahead of time so you can prepare and then make your delivery and then get your recording. So that's how that works. dallaspitcrew@gmail.com, and practice early, practice often, even if it's one-way interviews.
Thank you, Mark. And Mark's other half is Walt Glass. Good afternoon, Walt.
The top, left, bottom, right. Which half am I?
Better half.
Well, I'll tell you this, I'm the older half, so I can fit that category pretty easily. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's session. And I'd like to let you know that I also like to help people with their interviewing skills, but I start with the fundamentals. We got to go down to the basics of differentiation, on how we differentiate ourselves. And we cover the 11 basic categories of questions. And I give you suggestions, options, strategies, structures, things that will help us answer those types of questions. So it's very fundamental. It's very informal. I do it on Zoom. Look at my About section on LinkedIn that has details, and send me an email to my Yahoo email address that you see on the screen, and I'll send you back some dates of availability, which I generally hold on Tuesdays from 10 to 12. So I have a very small group, and we try to have a little bit of fun while we're learning. There's no need to sit in a hot seat to learn. Everyone that comes is interested in improving their skills and their abilities for confidence in interviewing. And so that's the purpose. We're not here to grade you or to shoot you down or whatever it might be. You don't make mistakes, we just learn and grow. That's the positive aspect of learning how we can improve our interviewing skills. So send me that note and I'll be glad to get you registered. If you have a request to connect with me, please send a note. I like to practice differentiation, because what do? If you just touch the button that says, "Hi, Walt, I'd like to connect with you on LinkedIn," I interpret that as you did exactly the minimal effort possible for you to do to connect with me, which is what many people do, and that's not very different. So to be different, send me that little note, like Mark was saying. So how did you meet me? Where did you see me? Something like that. Doesn't take much for me to connect with you, and I'll be glad to do so. So let me know when you want to sign up. I'm ready to go.
Great. Walt, thank you very much. Well, today is session number 5, analyzing the job description, what you need to know about job descriptions, analyzing a job description for clues regarding what you can do to help and what to include when there is no job description. So, gentlemen, please take it away. Mark, you're muted.
There we go. We started in the wrong place there. Now I can't get it to back up.
Click the little arrow at the very bottom.
There we go. There we go. Had to click on the screen. All right, let me take a moment. I want to make sure I can see the chat window, and hopefully I can see some of you as well. That's a little trickier. When you become the presenter, things change and then you have to rearrange them. There we go. I have a few people and I've got the chat window, and analyzing the job description, another great session from Walt and I about the final topic in the preparation series of the first 5 presentations. Now it won't go again. Let's try it one more. There we go. The first 5 sessions are all about preparing the interview. And so we're on session 5 of the preparation section. So there they are, recruiting, how to prepare networking, star stories, video interviewing last week, and now analyzing the job description. And then next week, we start another series of 5, which is all about effective interviewing. So 5 to prepare, 5 for effectiveness, and then the last 3 are kind of additional special topics that build on all the information that came before, including how to handle difficult interviewers and their difficult questions and avoiding crashes. So that's what's coming up. All of these are available on the Career USA YouTube channel. That's where I go to take a look at them. I think they're also on Facebook, but I don't spend much time on Facebook. Jeff will tell you where to find them. This sequence that we are doing now is exactly the same sequence that we did in January, February, and March. The same order, the same topics, the same information. So if there's a topic you see on this list that you'd like to focus on right now, you can go find those on the Career USA YouTube channel, and it'll be recent. It'll be in the last 3 months or 4 months. And so you can take a look at those. If you're curious about how to build rapport, you can go look at number 10 there. You can find it on the Career USA YouTube channel. All right. Okay, I want to do a little audience participation and get you to share. You can either unmute and speak, or you can type your question or your comment into the chat window. Before we get started, I want to hear what your experience has been with job descriptions. And in particular, do you have any questions that you would like us to address today, to be sure and address today? And so, for example, this is one we are definitely going to cover. What should I do if there is no job description? But what other questions might you have? Go ahead and type them in or unmute and voice them, please. Don't be shy. I'm going to have Jeff turn on all your cameras so we can see you. Very lengthy in many cases, too long. Yes, 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 yes. Job descriptions sometimes are too long. We'll talk about why that happens. Thank you, Dana. Anybody else? Some are vague or asking for skills not known. Okay, what do you mean by skills not known? We're going to cover that one as well. Says one thing and the role is something else. Absolutely. They want the kitchen sink. They throw everything in it and we'll never find someone with all those skills. That is the purple squirrel. Yes, and then it looks like I missed one. When changing industries, how to assess transferable skills. Okay, Fred says, should I move on if there are elements on the job description that my skills do not fit or I'm not well experienced at? That's a common thing, Fred. We'll talk about that as well. How do I dress when you don't meet all the requirements? Okay, so we can touch on that today. That's not in this presentation. It's in another presentation, but let's write that one down. How to address not meeting all the requirements, and we'll see if we can mention some things about that. Several situations where they're actually looking for a different role or roles than in the job description. Okay, you guys have had some common experiences, so that's another one. The job description you're given is not the job description that applies. There's even a story where somebody was given, it came through the pit crew, they were given the wrong job description. So the very first question they asked to the candidate was something, tell me about this. And she was a pretty senior person, and she pulls out the job description. And she says, I don't see that on the job description. And sure enough, she had the wrong job description. They had sent her the wrong job description. So, all right. When is a job description meant for internal versus external? Are there any triggers? Okay, so we'll cover that as well in the context of working with recruiters. How to assess the highest priorities within the job description. Very good question. Christy, Walt's going to cover that. All right, a lot of good questions. And, you know, make sure if we don't answer your question that you bring it up at the end. And, you know, your microphones work. You guys can, you know, speak up if you need to interrupt us. I don't mind at all. Thank you very much. Let's move on. Okay, I'm going to kind of talk about the character of job description. So this is a pretty high level thing. Walt's going to get into actually analyzing them and how there are more details about how they're made. But I think it helps to understand just at a very high level, the character of a job description, what's the environment that's generating them. And this will explain why sometimes there's a gazillion requirements. It explains sometimes why they're very vague. Explain sometimes why you get a job description and they tell you, well, don't pay attention to the job description. You know, that's not really right. And you're going like, why would you give it to me if it's not right? But I'll cover that in my portion. And then Walt's going to go into a specific example of breaking down the job description and how to identify what, you know, is most important and how you should prepare for your interview. So this is still in the preparing the interview section. So typically, when you look at a job description, you're going to see 4 sections. And let's just focus on the first, before the first slash, okay? Because it'll be a job summary, then responsibilities and duties, then qualifications that you're supposed to have for the job, and then perhaps a preferred qualification section. Now, each of these sections go by different names, but typically you'll see 4 sections. Like for instance, the second there, it might say overview. Okay, that's the same as the summary. It might say responsibilities. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. Responsibilities and duties. Qualifications may be labeled technical skills, so on and so forth. You sometimes don't always have a preferred qualifications section. Now, the first thing to remember, and I heard Tony Bashir talk a couple of weeks ago, maybe last week, about resumes, and he said something that was so insightful, I committed to memory, and it explains a lot. It says resumes are not read, they're scanned. Okay, so you got to prepare your resume as if somebody, which is true, is only going to spend 10 seconds looking at it. So it's really important to remember that a job description is a corporate governance document. Okay, what that means is it captures the structure of the organization and the job titles, the official job titles, and the job and the pay ladder is all, the job descriptions are all built around these corporate governance ideas of equal pay, opportunity for promotion, pay directly associated with contribution, so on and so forth. So, and because it's a corporate governance document, producing a new job description or changing an existing job description can be an arduous challenge. So there's a lot of resistance, or let's say workarounds, where they'll take the document and use it because it's officially approved and it's in the structure and they don't have to go through any review to change it. But in reality, it's not exactly what they're looking for. They have other requirements. Now, sometimes, so the first 3 parts of this, the summary, the responsibilities, and the qualifications, are part of that corporate governance part. Okay, so those 3 sections are used by HR to grade the position, or said another way, they have a position that's a senior level position, and so it needs to have certain items in the job description, and those are captured in the summary, the responsibilities, and the qualifications. Okay. The 4th section is likely the only part that the current hiring manager is able to modify because it has no effect on the pay scale or grade. So you'll see things like master's degree preferred, but the job title is is whatever it is, project manager 2. So that means they're not going to give you any money for a master's degree. That's what that means. Okay, it's a preferred requirement, but likely the hiring manager has put that in there. Okay, it has no effect on the grade and salary structure of the job. And they may have other tools and particular things, but the thing to know is that if this is the case, that it's a larger company, this is the only place the hiring manager gets to customize the job description, is in that preferred qualifications section. So it's not something to ignore. It might even be something to focus on. Let's keep going. Now, somebody asked about this, a very vague. This is a strategy, actually, and I learned about this early in my career. I was, when I first got promoted and to manage a group, we were hiring some people, and they asked me to review the job description. So I'm sitting there with HR reviewing the job description. I'm going, this is really vague. We should add this and this and this because that's what we're looking for. And they said, oh, nope, that's not what we want to do. We want to be very kind of vague. We want to cast as big a net as we can, and then after we catch a bunch of fish, we're going to sort them out afterwards. Okay, we don't want anybody turned away because there was some specific requirement they meet. They might be a great hire, so on and so forth. So this was their strategy, was just to collect up a whole bunch of people and then sort it out. Now, other companies don't want to do that. They don't want to spend the time doing that. They only want candidates to self-select, and so they'll put a lot of detail in there and expect mostly to hold you to it. Okay, you just don't know, but that's why you'll see some very vague job description. Now, also, companies hire. Some companies believe you can be trained to do just about anything, and so they're really hiring for personality and fit, who you are. Walt will talk about this, and so they may have very vague and limited job descriptions as well, because they're really looking for the right personality and the right type of person, and what you've done, achieved, is not as important to them as your motivation or your interest in working for their company. So that's another reason why they may not be very specific, and you'll kind of less experienced roles are usually less specific than more experienced roles, because new hires, new college graduates, or people young in their career don't bring a lot of experience with them. And so if you put a whole bunch of things on there, you're not really looking for that type of person. You're looking for a more senior person. Now, job descriptions are often out of date, written some time ago. And so they're not kept up to date because their corporate governance document, and it's a pain to get them changed. And when I say it's a pain, if you want to rewrite it, you got to get somebody from HR to do it. HR has to get it approved. It might have to go all the way up to the VP of HR. They'll spend some time figuring out how it fits into the job structure and the pay grade scale. And so it might take months to get this done. It can happen. It can happen, and I'll give you some examples here in a little bit. But most of the time, it won't happen until they find somebody who they believe meets their requirements. And then if a modification is required, they'll put in the effort to do that. And I've got several examples to share with you about that coming up. But mostly they'll grab what they got and run with it. Okay, they don't want to spend any time and effort reviewing or changing it. Now, so here's how this happens. The job description kind of grows and grows and grows over time as the age of the job description gets older and older. So, what I just said, it may not be true. Depends on the size of the company, really. They may allow the hiring manager with HR approval. It may not be that tough to add a few items. And so the list, they never take anything off. They just keep adding a few items at a time. And so I think a really detailed interview is a good indication that it was written some time ago and probably wasn't written by the current hiring manager and may not express the current priorities, meaning that the very first, requirement may not be the most important. It's buried in there somewhere. It may even be at the bottom, okay, because the most recent hiring manager added it to the list right at the bottom. So that's some things you got to watch out for. And so it makes analysis of the job description very important. It's not just saying, okay, well, these are the top 3 things that they put on their list, and that's what I'm going to focus on, because they may not be the top 3. They may be buried deeper down in the job description. Few job descriptions have been written by the current hiring manager. So this goes along with their age, right? And that can be a good question to ask at the beginning of the interview. So we have a whole section on openings and closings, and another section on asking questions. So I'm not going to get into this really deep, but just let me say it in case you get a chance to use it, is, right after you make your opening statement, you may ask this question, Mr. Hiring Manager, Mrs. Hiring Manager, did you write this job description? And if they say no, it was written sometime before, then you have an opening to say, well, what is most important to you for this role you're about to fill? So that's a really potential way to introduce the topic of gaining more information about what that current hiring manager is looking for. Okay, some jobs do not have a job description yet, and you may receive a JD for the correct pay grade and position title, but little else that is actually relevant to the job. So somebody asked about this as well, and this is how it happens. And I was kind of surprised the first time this happened in the pit crew, but it happens, I wouldn't say real often, but it does happen. It's usually for more senior level positions. And so they'll give you a job description and they'll say, this isn't really the job description, but what it is it has the correct title and the correct level or pay grade. Okay, and it may not even have the correct title, but it might, might be a senior accountant instead of a senior finance business analyst, and they're similar pay grade but different title. So you'll get a senior accountant when you're a senior business analyst, and they'll say, well, we're working on updating the job description. But that's how that happens. And so you're going to look at all these requirements for accounting and say, well, I'm a business analyst, and so I know something about accounting, but it's not what I really do. Well, that's what's going on. They're just trying to, as they're going through the process probably of getting that position approved, and so they have attached this job description to that approval as an example of how, what the person would cost and the span and scope of their responsibility. And so that's what's going on. So don't let that throw you off. And it can, certainly it's an unusual situation, but that's what's going on. Okay, I got a couple of more audience participation questions for you. This, I guess you're going to have to put this in the chat. I can only see about 5 of you on my screen. So who here, who's of the 30 people or so that are on the Zoom and the Facebook, who has been engaged in a job opportunity where there was no job description? Didn't provide you a job description at all. Has anyone had that experience? I think one person has because they asked about it. Not yet. Yeah, if it's you, just put a yes or something in the chat window and we'll see. And then, how about this one that I just talked about? Has been given a job description but told that it did not represent the requirements. It was a placeholder while the real job description was being prepared. Yep. So Anita's had one of those, had been engaged where there was no job description. Christy, yes, there you go. It's a couple of them. Wow, Bonnie, we have to find out what you do, Bonnie. She says she's been the first person hired for a new undefined job 3 different times. There you go. All right, well, let's keep going. And thanks for your response, guys. Something to think about. But what do you do when there's no job description? What do you do when you're being hired for an undefined role where you get to define it, or perhaps it's in the head of the hiring manager and they, you got to get it out of them. Perhaps the recruiter knows, but perhaps they don't. So really, you will encounter some vague situations. And so to improve your ability to address what their needs are without them being written down, and to improve your confidence and to shorten your job search, you are going to have to do your own research. And here's what I suggest, okay, is that you find job descriptions that were for similar roles with competitors. And this is a good idea to do all the time, okay, is you're looking for certain things. You should look at job descriptions that are put out by the competitors of your target companies. You should just kind of look at the whole environment for what you're looking for in adjacent industries and your industries as well. But it's doubly important when you don't have a job description to know what people are asking for in similar situations, similar corporate situations. And that can inform you what they might be asking for as well. So having target companies really helps there, because you can focus on those target companies when you don't have an opportunity queued up and limited time to prepare. And so work on your prioritized list of target companies and go searching for job descriptions that are close to what you'd like to do in case pops up with a job, a job available that has no job description yet. You can still prepare and talk with confidence about what you're able to do and how you're able to help. In this case, it would be companies in similar situations, but you're using that as a straw man for their opportunity. Informational interviews would be really helpful here to ask people what their challenges are when you're interviewing them in an informational interview. And we have a whole session, I think it's session 11 on target companies and informational interviews. So if you want to go watch that one from, it would have been in April, it would have been in March. If you go look on the Career USA channel in the March 2021, you'll see that session 11. But that's how you can learn informally, I guess, through your contacts inside the company, what they might need and what's important to them. Is it safe to ask the interviewer if the company outsources their positions? Good question, Michelle. Yeah, recruiter, you should ask the recruiter. It's kind of a question about who's going to be your employer, right? It could be a professional employment organization. You could be employed directly with the company you're hiring. So that's a good question to ask the recruiter. Okay, now this is the important part. You're going to do this research and you don't have a job description, or you got a very vague job description. So you're going to have to make a leap. You're going to have to analyze and predict, kind of how you would help them. And you're going to put that in your opening statement. These are the ways I can help you. And you're going to list 2 or 3 ways that you believe you can help. But then you have to start asking questions. And it really starts with not the interview, but the recruiter. And hopefully there is a recruiter. But if there's not, whoever you're engaging with, you start asking questions about what their most important requirements are. So this is to confirm that what you found in your research is still valid, okay? And you likely may turn up some new things that weren't obvious from your research, but you're never going to know unless you ask, okay? Good practice in any interview, but especially if you don't have a job description, you're going to find out by asking. Ask everyone you interview with. If you go, if you have more than one person, you can ask every one of them, what are the most important priorities for this position? And what are the most important priorities from your perspective? And, what was it in my background that you believe will make the most impact here? That's a good way to draw out what they see in your background that's important to them. Got to find out what they're buying so you can address how you can help them. Walt will get into that a little more detail. Okay, here you go. Session 6 covers openings and closings and asking questions in session 8 and session 11, informational interviews. So I covered a lot right there. We've got sessions on these topics coming up. Okay, I got a little poll now. How close of a match to the job description would you need before you would pursue an opportunity? So please fill in that poll. And let's see, can I put them up on the screen for you guys on Facebook? Here they are. Here's your choices. Okay, so this is very similar to the last time we did the poll with the majority. This is almost half of you are in the 60 to 70% range, you know, so that's 2/3, right? That's right in the middle of that range. So you'd expect that you'd have to meet 2/3 of the requirements before you'd apply for the job. I think Jeff just locked it there, so it ended up being 47% of you. Yep, it's a little bit less than half are looking for 60 to 70%. And then the other one is 50 to 60, and then kind of A, 40 to 50 or greater than 70%. You know, those two, yeah, greater than 70% of would be about 15% of you. Well, let's see what I put down on my slide here. So the question in my mind is, how close a match would there need to be for you to reach out to the recruiter for that position, the recruiter at that company? And here's what you want to be able to do. You want to be able to call up the recruiter and say, I have what you're looking for. Now, given what I just said about the hiring manager probably didn't write the requirements, that the things at the bottom of the list might be the most important ones to the current hiring manager, that sometimes these things grow over time. I would say I would go for less than 60 to 70%. I would say somewhere around 50%. If you meet those requirements, you should give them a call and say, hey, I meet your requirements. And then you can have a discussion about the requirements that you meet. And then, right, you're talking to the recruiter inside the company. And now it may turn out that the priority is on other portions of the job description, or there's some items that aren't listed on the job description, but it's worth a conversation if you meet 50% or so, if you can get a hold of somebody. And after you have that conversation, then you can decide if you want to apply or not. Okay. So it may turn out that the 50% that you have are the most important requirements. And you've just had a conversation with the recruiter and let them know that you have what they're looking for. And so now you're on the inside track. You're on the fast track. And that'll advance your candidacy much quicker than avoiding applying or avoiding making that call. Why do companies hire people? Okay, I'm going to start wrapping up now. I mentioned this before, and here's an example. Brian had a couple of years of HR experience. I think he worked in benefits, and he practiced with the practice interview team. And this job description wasn't even half a page. It was, like double spaced, 2/3 of a page. They wanted 1 year of HR experience in any area and a little bit about the company, and that was about it. Okay, so this is clearly a company who's looking for a relatively inexperienced person, but they're more focused on who that person is than what they have done. Just a little bit of experience in HR was good enough, but what's not on there is the kind of personality they're looking for. And you don't find that out until you interview, but that's kind of what that job description is telling you if you see something like that. This is Rudy Chakrabarty. She worked at Honeywell, big company. She was I don't know what her title was, product marketing, I think. Product marketing was her title. And she had a lot of experience with flow control. So it's industrial applications. This company was looking for a product marketing person for power systems, not at all related. But she had a lot of good experience. She interviewed very well. She had a nice portfolio of things she'd done. And she came from a much larger company. This was a smaller company, maybe 100 people. So when after they met her, and she was encouraged by somebody on the inside to engage, even though she didn't have the major requirement, power systems background. But it turns out that was less important to them than the breadth and depth of her experience and the fact that she'd worked for, a name brand company, Honeywell. So they changed the job description, took off the power system requirements, and used that job description to hire her. Now, can or will a company create a job for you? Yep, we've got 3 examples, absolutely. The City of Dallas, USAA, and Broadcom. So in all 3 of these cases, the candidate engaged, this was Monet Schumann, engaged the City of Dallas and pitched to them a role that they didn't have. And they agreed that they wanted to do that. And then they went through the process of building, creating a job description and getting it approved. So City of Dallas and USAA, those were both high-level positions. So that took several months, okay? But they kept the candidate engaged, with the process, and ultimately it came to fruition, and they were hired for brand new roles that didn't exist within organization prior to them, having an informational interview, having lunch, or arranging to, pitch their idea. Broadcom was a meeting, it was an accounts payable, I think. Yes, accounts payable. So not a real high level position. Oh, and by the way, the City of Dallas and USAA examples for you people who have, 20 years of experience, here's how it can happen for you. You bring that kind of experience to a company, they may create a role for you. Now, the Broadcom example is a little lower level position, but it happened through a chance lunch meeting with a previous coworker who was now a manager in the organization. And after having lunch and catching up and realizing that the candidate had some things that Broadcom needed, did the work, got the job approved, and hired him. Took a couple of months, but that's the way it goes. It's possible. Okay, that was my last slide. Walt, you're up.
Let's back up a little bit and take a look at how it really should be done if we're doing it. And some companies do this and it starts this way, but it doesn't end this way. So we get the right people together to say, okay, we need to create a job description. There's something new we need. Maybe there's companies expanding, or they need a different role slightly. They need more people in a particular role, so they only have one, but that person kind of gravitated into that role and has been doing that job. Now they need to hire more. So things like that can happen. So we get together and say, well, let's figure out what we need and how we're going to go about hiring somebody. So they really look at the activities and find out, what does this person really do? And how long do they spend doing it? I mean, what's the amount of time they spend doing these things? What's the primary duties and responsibilities that this role should come out of this a little analysis? And also, what authority level, what decision-making capability are we going to put in this particular position? And then let's list our experience needed, our technical and soft skills, education. These usually come under the required, or candidate must have, those types of things. So what are those things that we just absolutely have to have? Sometimes this can be a long list, sometimes it can be a short list. Somebody asked a question about how can you tell if this might be an internal role written for somebody internally. If the essential qualifications contain things that are not necessarily normal for the average person, that might be an indicator that they have taken somebody's specific requirements. They put it so tight that nobody else can fit this because they got to give this job to that person. So that can happen once in a while. But anyway, what are those retired things? And then what are the preferred qualifications? What would we like to have? Gee, we might like to have somebody with 5 years experience, but if they don't, maybe 4 years or 3 years will do. But that's kind of preferred. And then really the last thing they should do is determine the job title, which is fun. If you've ever been in a meeting where you determine a job title, you can understand that this might take longer than all the rest of it because job titles just go all over the map. I had the same job for a company for nearly 10 years and I had 4 job titles, same role. They just changed it. I suggested we have shirts with Velcro on it so that we could put a new job title up there and just paste it to our shirt like the military does on their uniforms. And we can say, all right, here's what my role is and what my job title would be. So that would, but what really happens, and they also got to go through a legal review and make sure they're in compliance with the ADA and EEO for the Disabilities Act and the Equal Employment Opportunity. So now what happens really is generally a corporate recruiter, if there is a corporate recruiting, if it's a company that has one, generally will drive this process. Hiring managers like to tell somebody we need somebody. And when HR says, well, what are you looking for? Then it's hard to get answers and information. So if they get something, then they'll try to build on top of that. They'll edit it more than they actually define it at times. And they may work with a hiring manager. We sometimes assume that the hiring manager is fully aware of everything in a job description. And that is just not true. Some of them don't know everything that's in a job description. Yes, they know what they're looking for generally, but necessarily the job description may not really emphasize the things that they're looking for. There are companies that have more job descriptions than employees. So they build over time and you have all these roles and it keeps building and building and building. And the next thing you know, you got 5,000 employees and 5,500 job descriptions. And so generally agency recruiters are really not involved too much in this process. They usually prepare an intake document. So where they're looking for information from the company and say, okay, here's what I think you need and so even though they have a job description, the saying goes from amongst the recruiters is from the research that I've seen on the internet anyway, if you can believe everything there, is that about 80% of what they write down on their intake document does not match the job description. That's a huge difference. Therefore, what's the lesson? You can't depend on a job description. You just can't look at that to say that describes the job completely and fully. I understand everything about it. You really can't trust it, but it is a starting point. At least I have something I can go with that. So I'm going to treat it as the starting point and see how I can go from there. If that's all I have and that's all I know, what can I do with that? The job description is going to probably generate more questions than answers as to what's going on. So when you're looking at a job description, you're going to be finding out some more details and information about that, just like they look at our resume and they're going to be finding out more information and details about that from the resume. So yes, we got to play the little game of, at least initially, of checking your resume and keywords, all right? This is something that I don't want you to do too much. I don't want to get into resumes, but you can't spend your whole life redoing and having version 75 of your resume. Now, you might have some different versions to tailor for sure, but once you get the job description, you can look at the keywords in the job description and see what the keywords are that match. JobScan is one of the tools that you might, I think it's jobscan.co or something like that. Thanks, Jeff, for the nod and Mark. Where you can put yours in a very, very like a text format in one window and then the job description other, and it'll come out with matching words. And I suggest you take, Mark was suggesting, take multiple job descriptions for the type of job you're looking for. And you can put 5 or 6 of them in that window and then come out and say, what's the most often used things? So you might find the top 5 skills and which ones of those are prevalent. So that might give you some ideas of how you might approach. But the idea is we want to match what they're buying, right? With what we are selling. So we start with that job description. So in my philosophy of what are they buying, it's 3 things. And so I've come up with this idea of saying, what is it that people buy? They want to buy who we are. What's your personality? What are your soft skills? What kind of characteristics do you have? How do you get along with teams? How do you get along with people? How do you get along with customers? That's why they ask us some questions about, how about a difficult time with? And you can say a customer or a vendor or a manager. You can put in anybody you want. And so how do you deal with that? So how do we solve problems? How do we do that? So they want to know about who we are. They also need to know about what we do. A lot of screening is done on the what we do because they're looking at our experience and our background, our history. Do we meet the education requirements? Do we meet a lot of the things and activities that we'll be doing, things that we'll be responsible for? So a lot of screening covers that, but very little sometimes does that cover the personality who we are. And then lastly, it's how we can help them. And this is the thing that I see that is probably the most often omitted area in our interviews and our analyzing a job description to find out just exactly what is it we can do for them. This started out back in 2000 when I did my networking. I got into an interview. I got into the hiring manager, was Interstate Batteries, and we sat in a conference room and he said, well, Walter, what can you do for me? Which was just an I help question. You know, he didn't ask all about my background, my experience, and what can you do for me? Well, I didn't have a clue, not a clue. So I walked out of there, I flunked. I got a G, not even an F. So it was so bad that I said, I got to fix this. And so that got me into this thing of doing the interview success workshop. And how do we sell these three things? So how do we find out based on what we know with a job description? So I took a job description, and this is the first part of one that I just selected. It's not everything in the job description. And I said, all right, let me look at this and let me see where the I ams, the I do's, and the I helps might be. So I looked at that one. And so I went through and just took all the soft skills and put them in red. Okay. So leading is one of them. Coaching and mentoring. And interestingly enough, coaching and mentoring is something you do, but it's also a skill. So it fits both of those categories. Communicate. Almost every job description has excellent communications. You are just great writers. You're great presenters. You're great, verbal communications. Well, our resume is going to show them our written skills, and our interviewing conversation, our interviewing is going to show them our verbal skills. So that's how they will test that. But everything generally has some type of communication requirement in it. Interestingly enough, the job descriptions that are very technical in nature, they're just all technical items on there. There's not a soft skill even listed on many of them. It's very interesting. They don't care who we are. They just want to know if we can do it. So sound judgment, critical thinking, leadership, sense of urgency. Those types of things I just went through and said, all right, let me find out what those are. Then I went through and said, what are the activities that I do? So these are the things that I do. So I went through and I colored those in this turquoise color and said, all right, what are the things you do? You do these kinds of activities. Then I went through and said, okay, and what's the result of these activities and my skills, my soft skills? And so I ensure this, ensuring that to meet project requirements, ensure successful deployment, things like that. So I just went through and analyzed all the I helps, all right? And when I get through, I've got a resume, a job description that looks like this. I said, okay, now that I've looked at the I am, I do, I help, I go back and let's go look at the I ams. And somebody said, how do you know which ones are the most important? Well, sometimes you can tell by the number of times that word is used in a job description. Leadership is often one that's used. Communication might be one that's used. Collaboration is often one that might show up a few times in a resume. How often is it really mentioned? Just like they look at keywords in ours, we can go back and look at theirs and get some idea. Now remember, you can't necessarily depend on it, but it is a starting point. So here they're looking for multitasking, all right? Lead multiple projects concurrently. So can you multitask? The coaching, guiding, mentoring, communication, the sound judgment, critical thinking. I'm going to pay a little bit more attention to that later. Leadership and that sense of urgency. I've very, very few times seen sense of urgency listed in a job description, but I've seen it many, many times in corporations that says you have to have a sense of urgency about the task and of doing things. I remember in the last company, it did not say deadline oriented on the job description, but I won't tell you, that was very, very sacred in the company. We met all of our deadlines. They were absolutely critical to do that. Very, very high on the priority list. Here's all the things that you do. Here's the activities. And then doing those activities, here's all the things. So I kind of made separate lists and said, all right, now I can talk about with them the things that I can help them do. So they're selling me or showing me what they're buying by saying, can you do these things that yield these types of results? So I'm sure that if you know anything about project management, everybody does on budget, on schedule, and on time. So, within budget and schedule, budget and quality, whatever. I can't remember the third one all of a sudden. But nonetheless, if you say that's what I do as a project manager, that I'm on budget and I'm on schedule, that all project managers do that. It's the results of the project management that are going to make the difference for us. So as we look at project management and we see these things here, these are the things that I can say back to them about my activities as a project manager that yields value to this particular role. So I'm going to do a little timeout here because I think this is very important. I'm seeing these three things show up on job descriptions, and I'm seeing also a lack of good communication skills to talk about in our interviews what these things are and how we use them. So diversity and inclusion, critical thinking, and emotional intelligence. So since they show up, I want to do a little sidetrack on that. Now you might want to take some screenshots or come back and look at this later because I'm going to go over these pretty quickly. So diversity really is, do we represent the same diversity as the community in the corporation? HR is very, very much involved in diversity, filling out the reports, making sure that what we're doing and what we look like, how all that matches. So they report a lot of it and show a lot of that information. So they generally will have a statement at the bottom that talks about we don't discriminate with all these protected categories. Inclusion is very much a leadership involved activity because leadership was the one that says, do the people on the team feel like they belong? All right. I was talking to a manager and I was doing some consulting and I said, I've just talked to your team members and they say that you don't listen to them. And he said, well, I do listen to them. I absolutely listen to them. I said, then why do they say that you're not? Well, it comes down to his definition of listening was hearing what they said. And their definition of listening was you don't do anything different with the information that I give you. So there's a different perspective. And so do they feel like they belong? And how do you make them feel like they belong? Because you will do some of the things. You'll listen to their suggestions and ideas, and they will feel like they are an important part of the team because they are contributing. Critical thinking. The thing about critical thinking is I'm concerned that the interviewers don't know what it is either. I don't know how many people really understand that one. But really, it's an unbiased process of trying to take facts and data and evidence to make a decision. So it's objectively. So here's the tough part. We all have biases. They're inside of us, and we have to figure out what they are and how do we remove those from making these decisions. So our personal feelings, opinions, and biases. So we have to recognize that in others as well as ourselves. Now, that's not an easy job, but that's what it's all about. If you want to talk about critical thinking, you can say, well, let me tell you what I think is important about critical thinking. And the skills that I have is I'm able to identify that situation, that problem. I'm able to complete and do the research, make some inferences on things that may not be all complete in data, but I can understand how to interpret that and make some inferences. I know how to look at biases and see different ways of seeing people's different perspectives, figuring out that what data is relevant and what's not relevant. And I always keep this idea of, I'm very curious about everything and I want to find out. And so I ask a lot of open-ended questions. So if I talk like that, saying this is how I apply critical thinking, you're going to be way ahead of anybody else. You probably will wow them because they don't know what it is either. And then lastly, emotional intelligence. That's really the ability to read others. Some people are looking at emotional intelligence as the one key to success in a role. Without it, it does have some merit to say, if you can't understand others' perspective, you can't understand where they're coming from, you can't understand that, you can't very well communicate with them effectively. So in any communication, it would be great if we understood their frame of reference. Whose frame of reference are you usually in? Are you patiently waiting for them to finish so that you can correct them and tell them what it is? Are you going to repeat what you said because they disagree with you? And since they disagree with you, they must not have understood. So you're going to tell them again. Is that the way you're going to approach it? Or are you going to approach it from an aspect of saying, maybe their idea is better than mine. Maybe their idea has merit. Let me pause. Let me think before I pass judgment. So something like that, I think would be great for you to talk about when you're trying to explain how you use and work with others to adjust your behavior so it's effective with them. So it'd be good to keep those in your star stories. somewhere in there, you can talk about where you use inclusion, where you use critical thinking, where you use emotional intelligence. All right. Lastly is you take the job description. Here's another way I suggest you might take it and look at it by saying, all right, everything on the job description has one line per item. And I put that down on the left, all right? Then I say, now what experience do I have? What background do I have? Or is there some education involved? Or there's certifications involved? What is it that I have that says I've done that kind of thing before? And what's the value that I can bring to that? So if I've done this kind of, I have this kind of soft skill, how is that soft skill related to a particular achievement that I've made? Then from my library of STAR stories, the situation, task, action, result, when they say, give me about a time when you promoted continuous improvement of service quality, productivity, and customer satisfaction. All right, well, then I can have a story that goes along with that particular item. You don't have to have a different story for every item, but you need to have a story for every item, all right? It's just like you have to have a reason you left every last company, even though they might not ask you each one, you still have to have a reason for leaving that. So if you kind of put it out in that fashion, you've done an analysis taking the job description, and a lot of that should come from your resume, your background, your history. You should have all that kind of prepared, ideally. Then when you get to the job description, you should be able to fill this in fairly easily. Now, it's a lot of work and a lot of time to do that. So I ask you this, should you practice today? Well, of course you should. Even if you don't want to, you should practice today. Even if you feel uncomfortable, you should practice today. Everyone who has practiced, and Mark can bear me out with this, that's come through the PIT crew or come through the interview success workshop, have all said, I'm glad I did. This was worthwhile. I've learned something. This has helped me. I remember Jared, he wanted to get into Lockheed. I don't know how many times he came to PIT crew, 6 or 7, came to the interview workshop, 9 or 5, he practiced and about 4 or 5 times with me. I know that even Jeff was on one of his panels when he interviewed Jared. And he got the job, and he announced it and said the real interview was very, very easy compared to all of these. Well, why do you think that was? It was because of all the practice that he had accomplished. So go through the practice. Come on down. We are on your side. We want to help you. Step out of your comfort zone and put your learning hat on and say, I'm just here to improve my skills and do a better job. And we are here to help you do the same thing. So any questions? Now we got several that are in the chat window. Some of them are a little outside the scope of actually analyzing the job description, but I think we can try to address those as well.
Yeah, I've got 3, well, 3 or I got 4 here. So, and let me just read them off and then we can split them up. And ask how to address not meeting all of the requirements. And so we'll come back to that, but that's covered in session 12. If you want to look at session 12, and Christy asks how to address transferable skills when changing industries. And also another Chung, I think, I don't know the first name, asked a similar question about transferable skills. So we addressed that in session 9, but we'll discuss it briefly. And then Christy also asked about the pay grade session, and session 7 covers, what are your salary requirements, which also gets into, when you should bring it up if they haven't already brought it up. So which ones do you want to address, Walt?
Well, let's just start with the top and go down the list.
How to address, not meeting all the requirements.
All right, so there's some dependencies on where you not meet all the requirements. If it is a company that you want to work with, they're a target company, I would lower the number of requirements that you need to meet the job, because I want to get in and talk to the company. I want to sell them my value that I can do for them, and it can be outside of those job requirements that they've listed. So I want to focus on that. So yes, you may lose the battle and win the war type thing. So you might want to get in and talk to them and show them what you can do for them. And so I would lower the percentage of meeting the requirements if it is an absolute target company. You got your chance to get in. Now, if it's a job that you can do, but it's not really what you want to do, I'll put that on the back burner. I would prioritize those that you want to do ahead of those that you can do. So if it's one of those, that says, yeah, I'm looking at it, I could probably do this job, and it doesn't quite meet that. But there's opportunities to interview are rare. So sometimes it's worth going through the interview process and getting your rejection just for the experience of it. Now, I don't mean to make that too oversimplified. You don't want to go in there and be really all that different. But sometimes, remember, you can't depend on the job description. So you get in there and start asking questions and figuring things out. And then if it comes out and says that's, it's right, it really isn't the right type of job. But you now have connections that you might be able to build inside that company to other jobs that might fit. And I don't know if you want to add anything to that or not, Mark.
Yeah, I'm gonna from a little different perspective. So let's say you get an interview and you're concerned that you might not meet enough of the requirements. Okay, so well, first of all, they interviewed you, right? So they asked you to interview. Now they may ask you to interview, you're going to interview with 4 or 5 people, and one of those people might be quite concerned that you don't have some particular skill. So you need to exercise what we talk about is you need to find out early in the interview what's important to that person. Okay. And then when the question comes up, well, I see here that you don't have your CPA, certification, and that's what we're looking for. You go for the preponderance of the evidence, but I have this, you need this, and I have that, you need this, I have that, you need this, I have that. And, I've worked with CPAs and CPA level responsibilities in the past, and I'm comfortable working with that responsibility in the future. And there you go. It's kind of the preponderance of the evidence to blunt that kind of objection. Okay, so that's good. Let's go on to transferable skills when changing industries. So I would just say, think about adjacent experience, and then, my caveat about anyone who wants to change industries is you should get a coach, because it's a process. There's not a short answer. It's a very customized thing. But Walt, you want to address that?
I would certainly suggest that you do not use the word transferable in an interview. Transferable indicates that you're moving away from something towards something, and that kind of is a negative thing. So, I have these kind of skills. So, but I want you to show the skills that you do have that apply, that are relevant to this job, and sell those. Okay, so don't use the word transferable. It's too much saying I'm moving into something different. And when you sell yourself as moving into something different, that's going to be a negative by them. So just focus on what you can do for them. Focus on the skills that you have that are relevant to them. Sell that, do that, and see where it goes.
Yes, adjacent skills. And session 9 addresses that as well.
And I was going to add that Carol Bukel, who teaches our resume class on Thursday, she's actually putting together a presentation right now, which she's going to do on August 13th to the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group. So, it's all be about how do you transfer skills and how do you move from one position, career changing, how do you, and show some scenarios on what to do. She is a career coach, so it should be an interesting presentation that she's working on.
Right now. So Carol's a career. So the short answer is it takes a lot of research, and it's incumbent upon you to describe how your adjacent experience applies into your new company, a new role. And so that's where all the work comes in, and a coach can help you out a lot with that. Okay, let's see. The last question, Walt, was a pay grade question. How do you find out the pay grade that the job description is based around? I think it's the focus of that question.
My suggestion is you do your research for the job title to 2 primary websites, BLS.gov, Bureau of Labor Statistics, and salary.com, which is company provided salary data for job title, location, and industry. So there is where I would do my research to see what the market is paying, what the market research indicates that it is, to find that. Now, you might find similar jobs on Indeed that have salaries included on the job description. You might get an indication there to find out. And informational interviews also might be a source of saying, what do you think the typical ranges be, or what are they paying people in this type of role, if you've got an insider who can share that type of information. So those are my initial thoughts.
Yeah, no, That's good. Now, in terms of, oftentimes the recruiter will ask you what your salary requirements are. So you need to have done that research. And as part of your answer, you want to find out what their budget is. And then you know if it's going to be acceptable to you. If you get into the interview and you get to the third meaningful discussion and salary hasn't come up, then you should bring it up. You should find out before you spend any more time if you've got a match or a mismatch with the market rates and what their budget is.
And how would you do that? You've done the research that Walt talked about. Mark, I know you've got a great little saying. How would you bring that up and tell us and bring that into the interview?
How would you ask what the salary requirements are? Yeah, so this is the third time we've spoken, and I'd be very curious to know what your budget is for this position, what your salary budget is for this position.
And if they throw it back in your lap and go, well, what do you want, or what are your requirements?
Yeah, well, based on the market research I've done, you can say where you got it, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, this type of role. And so now you're starting to negotiate. So you want to give them a range that you found on Bureau of Labor Statistics, but you want to expand it a little bit. So let's say the number that you find through your research is 78 to 90. Well, you might say, the research I've done, this is a mid 70s to mid 90 type of role, based on responsibility and years of experience. So you've even expanded it. You don't want to, until you know their budget, you don't want to land outside their budget.
Right.
If you're really interested in in-depth analysis, take the workshop, because we deal with the salary questions in depth. And it takes too long for me to go through it all here, but it's something that you want to feel very comfortable with before you get into the interview, how you might respond.
All right, there's another couple of questions that come in. Jeff, did you take a look at those?
Let's see, what if you're afraid that you've never held a full-time job in the industry, but you've freelanced and have built up the skills and abilities to prep to land a job like the one you're interviewing for?
Accomplishments. What are your accomplishments that are relatable to the job you're going for? And whether you did it full-time or part-time is secondary to your accomplishments. Now, if you don't, because you were doing it part-time, you don't have a handful or two handfuls of accomplishments, that might be a bit of a struggle. So, but accomplishments is what you need to focus on, what you were able to achieve in the, that's adjacent to or exactly on top of the new position you're trying to get.
Right. Well, those were all the questions that I've seen. Anybody else have any more
Bottom
questions?
line,
Go ahead.
the bottom line comes down to finding out what they're looking for. You start with a job description if that's all you have. See if you can find that out. Then you want to validate those things inside of the interview by asking those questions. A prepared set of prioritized questions is going to be a strong difference maker in an interview, because you're going in there knowing what you need to find out. And you want to ask them, who are you looking for? What type of person? Is this a culture fit type thing? I can say without much reservation that if the culture doesn't fit, I don't care whether you can do the job and you can help me a lot. If I don't like you and I don't think I'll do well working with you, it doesn't matter. So culture is the primary. So I would suggest that we look at the culture things, the who you are, and does that match their culture in your research to say, yep, that looks like a good match. I want to move forward. Why go and do all this work for a company where the culture doesn't match? So find out those things. This is the whole idea behind this session, is to what information can I glean so that I can spend my time productively chasing the jobs that are right.
Walt, Mark, thank you very, very much. I think really, really great information. Hopefully, this helps everybody out in their job search. And analyzing that job description is really important because it helps you prepare for what you're going to do. Well, Career DFW and Career USA, we're putting on training 5 days a week. You're joined with us today, Wednesday, for Interviewing Wednesdays. Tomorrow for Effective Resume Thursdays, we're going to talk about resume writing rules. Let's see here. Resume writing rules that put you ahead of the competition. And we'll share some resume tips and tricks, and you'll have an opportunity to win a free month of unlimited use of jobscan.co. So if you'd like to do it, in fact, I heard a tip yesterday that you can go to jobscan.co, and it is .co, not .com. They only allow you to do 5 of them before you do 5. You can check 5 things, but I've heard that if you close out the window and then go back into it again, you can get 5 more. So it's every time, I guess, you go back in. So I'm not sure if that's true. I haven't tried it, but you have an opportunity to win a free month tomorrow. You can join us. At 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, I'm doing a presentation for Career Care about how to use Career DFW and Career USA in your job search. I'll tell you a little history about the website. We'll take a look at all the websites live. We'll go tab by tab, and I'll point out some things on there you may or may not know about. And then I'll share some of my top career tips at the end of that. It's open for all, and if you'd like to, you can find the link on the Career DFW website, and I'll be putting it out tomorrow morning along with in our daily email. Friday morning at the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group, we're going to have open forum the first Friday of every month. We just answer whatever questions you have about your job search, and everybody has an opportunity just to jump in and offer their opinion. So please join us this Friday at 9:30. And then Friday at 1 o'clock, Women of Wisdom. They meet the first and third Friday of each month. You do need to be invited if you're interested and you are a woman. Please send an email to wow@careerdfw.org, and they will send you the link for Friday's session. Next Monday for Networking Mondays, networking tips and techniques. This is with Charlie Zinger. Many of you may know Charlie. He's been a longtime member of the South Lake Focus Group on their career team out there. And then next Tuesday, how to create a LinkedIn brand that tells your key contacts who you are, what you do, and how you can help them. This is Terry Sullivan from BuzzPro. Very interesting marketing aspect about how to market yourself. This event will not be recorded, so you do need to watch it live if you're interested. And then next Wednesday, interviewing openings and closings. So we've gone through everything. The first 5 lessons were all about preparation. The next 5 will be about how to do the actual interview in the interview. So interview, opening and closing, and follow up next Wednesday at 1. So this session has been recorded along with all the other sessions. They will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook, like us on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way, every time we post a new video, you'll find out all about it and what's up to date and what we're posting. On the YouTube channel, it looks something like this. It is the Career USA YouTube channel. Be sure to click on playlist and then find the subject you're looking for. So if you're looking for interviewing, don't click on the video, but click down below where it says view full playlist. And then up will come a list of all the different sessions along with the titles. So you can go back and watch the one that you're interested in. If you're not receiving emails about our workshops, you can join the Career USA mailing list. You can send an email to Career USA, the + subscribe at groups.io. You will not be spammed. I put out 6 or 7 emails a week. You'll have the daily link and the topic for the day, so you can just be able to click right on it and join us every day. Please note, Career DFW, we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Mark, Walt, myself, we're all volunteers. We're just here to help you land your next great opportunity. So please consider making a donation when you get your next job so we can continue to provide the services that we're providing now. So thank you for joining us today. And if you need that email to join our mailing list, there it is again. Walt and Mark, thank you very much.